Ending slavery was not the reason.
And there was true guerrilla warfare going on.
The Civil War was fought at all. The Civil War was fought to bring the South back into unison with the North and to destroy the economic advantage that the South had due to slavery. They cared nothing about the lives of black people. They cared nothing about the way that we were treated. They cared nothing about African life. It was not about protecting us because they had somehow waken up and realized that we were human beings too. No, the South was growing too powerful.
Capitalism started to rise. But what began to happen is that in capitalism rising, it began to stifle capitalism because capitalism demands as an economic system that people are always trying to rise to the higher. They're competing. Competition fuels capitalism. But if you could buy an African for $300 and then pay somebody for 20 years $300 a year, which would you do? You'd buy someone one time for $300. But that's going to stifle capitalism because what's going to happen is there's going to be no competition because what European is going to compete for a job that they could buy an African to do? So the North said, look, enslavement of African people is stifling capitalism. And so the South said, so what you want me to do? They said, well, you got to free your Africans. They free my Africans. Well, how am I going to get my money? North said, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. They said, we don't trust you. No, we're not going to sell our... We are not going to stop enslaving Africans. We're just not going to do it. North said, but you have to because it's going to stifle capitalism and we're going to choke with overproduction without an ability to sell what we're... South said, but that's not my problem because I can sell my raw materials any place in the world. The North said, but then what would happen to us? We have factories. The South said, well, that sounds like a personal problem to me. I don't care what happens to you. North said, but you can't do that. South said, we're going to do that. We're not freeing Africans. They said, you got to free Africa. We're not freeing. In fact, the South said to the North, I'm tired of talking to you. I'm going to secede. I'm not even going to talk to you no more. In fact, I'm not even part of what your colonies are anymore. North said, you can't do that. South said, watch. That started the Civil War.
Well, one of the big things that occurred right at the end of the Civil War was that Europeans began to form unions. In fact, the workers' union is an outgrowth of slavery and the Civil War. When it looked like the cause was lost for the Confederacy, white men began to organize themselves into labor forces. Why did they do this? Because you are about to see 2 million enslaved Africans set free who have skills that equal or supersede your own, who would now be able to compete and buy with you for contracts and livelihood. That was a significant area of concern for white men. Okay, so if I was a European who was looking for work, couldn't find any because it had already been hired up to the slaves of a certain master. So when the Civil War came about and when slavery was about to end, that intensified. Because now slaves would be aggressively looking for work because when slavery ended, they had nothing to which they could claim their own to make a living. So that bothered Europeans and they set up agreements, okay, with those who had industries and those who had stores that you could only hire someone who was white who belonged to a particular labor's union. In fact, some of the first unions were started right here in Pennsylvania. And a lot of black people fail to realize the origin of the union. The union is nothing but a collective force of white people who are protecting jobs for themselves and keeping them away from black people.
The fight came that after slavery ended, we had jobs, which is what you mentioned earlier, that we were starting to get it together because we had skills. It was the white man that didn't have any skills because we're the ones who had been forced to work. The black man had. And so part of that destruction during all that Jim Crow and everything was fighting against the brothers who were trying to be in business and who were trying to work. And that fight between the black man and the white man about the construction business has continued down to today, which is why you can go into a city like Cincinnati and in Philadelphia where the black population is over 50 or 60%. And the white contractors own 99% of all of the jobs in the city. And that's nationwide. And they've kept us out of it. They've kept us out of the unions. This is what that was. But it was the black man who used to have all of the skills for building. We were the contractors, our people.
Abraham Lincoln himself said, if I could keep Africans enslaved and preserve the Union, I would do that. Abraham Lincoln didn't want to free African people. He had to because of capitalism, because he saw what was happening. But look at the mean trick. Let's continue the story. Now you have Africans that are free, who are part and parcel of America, who deserve not just a break, but they need a little bit more because they deserve, because they built America and made America what it was. So between 1865 and 1877, we have what's called the Reconstruction period, where black folk were going out, going to school, graduating, becoming doctors, lawyers. They were speaking Greek, Latin, better than people who taught Greek and Latin. They were going in, becoming senators, they were becoming congresspeople, they were becoming part of the world arena. Europeans got scared. So what did they do? They started an organization that would attack black folk. It was called the Tea Party. No, not the Tea Party. It was called the Ku Klux Klan. I'm sorry. I'm jumping up in history here. They're going to start to pass laws where segregation is going to exist, because they don't want Africans to be able to take the jobs that are going to be fueled by capitalism. So what do? They said, bring me your weak, your poor, your homeless. Bring me your sick, your ignorant. And that's when the immigration came. And that's who got the jobs. That was supposed